everyone, to the Verdi Music Hall in Berlin, host of the 2019 World's Group Stage. Yesterday, we had a jam-packed day of games where Splice did what many thought was unthinkable, bringing the LPL #1 seed to a tiebreaker game where FunPlus Phoenix came out on top. Hopefully, we can get just as many surprises today. Also, a shout out to all of our wonderful fans, as well as the teams giving out fan merch to support your favorite team, as well as the cosplayers in the venue and everyone being as excited. Candace in a little selfie with perks as well. Hello, everyone. I'm Shox with Jat, Raz, and Ender.
And Shox, you said you hope to see just as many surprises today where the #1 seed gets brought to a tiebreaker. Do you?
Yeah, wait, why are you hoping that?
Do you hope that?
If they end up winning it?
I don't want any tiebreaker
shots.
Shox.
Yeah.
If they end up winning it for the third time? No, I mean, you know what? I'm completely unbiased, of course, but yesterday it did make me quite happy to see that after some tough defeats, few had picked Splice to advance from Group B, but in the end they did. The home-time favorites shocked everyone with an amazing comeback run, Ender.
Yeah, it was fantastic to see because usually when I think about Splice, they're such a consistent team, but yesterday they absolutely exceeded our expectations, fixing a lot of their problems. You know, Vizichachi stepped up with some counter picks in the top lane. Their mid-game, all of a sudden, they're not getting picked out, they're not taking losing fights. They looked a whole lot cleaner throughout.
Yeah, we could finally see, Splice play that defensive playstyle for the first 15 minutes and look really good. So it's nice being able to see, to your point, Vizichachi come out strong, but also just Humanoid come out and make a lasting imprint on his rise.
Yeah, that's a good point because we had some question marks for the youngest and newest members on the rosters, Norskaren and Humanoid, to step up, and especially that man in the mid lane, Jat, really took a new step yesterday, helping that team advance.
Yeah, I thought Humanoid played spectacularly, and I also thought Splice got to display that they can be a good early game team, because coming in, I think a lot of people said, oh yeah, Splice is the slow team. They're the ones that don't do anything.
Yeah.
They had the third best early game in the LEC, only behind Fnatic and G2. So I think they played definitely above their average yesterday, but it wasn't some unthinkable thing. The most surprising thing was the win they picked up over FunPlus to force that tiebreaker.
Yeah, a really smart team. They really challenged FPX. It sucks to say, right? Like, I have all the expectations for FPX to come into this group, say they'll probably come out 6-0, and definitely wasn't the case.
Well, Raz, I will
they
give
still
you
won
the floor
5
now.
games.
Exactly.
That's true.
They're #1. They ended up really showing kind of what they can do in some of those games, especially that tiebreaker, Raz. So where are you at now with your feelings about the strength of FPX?
So I'm relatively positive about them just because you're right about the fact that when we saw them go up against J-Team and Splice later on in the day, they had dominant games where we got to see how they were playing in the summer split. Consistently around Doumbia and Tian once again as a god, being able to take full control of mid lane, enemy blue side jungle, channel, like all of these things that we've seen from them consistently, we were able to see in a few of those games. We just want those consistent points showing in the best of fives.
At the same time, I have way less faith in FPX than I did at the start of this tournament, because coming in, a lot of people had this team ranked as potential tournament favorites, at least top 3 contenders in this entire tournament, and they seed in to the easiest group in Group B, losing 2 games. I honestly, my expectations have lowered significantly.
I gotta ask you though, they're the #1 seed in the group. So they're likely getting drawn against the #2 seed from one of the other 3 groups. If they make the semifinals, they're automatically top 4, right? So I think
Splice is a #3 seed, for instance.
Well, no, I'm talking about the 1 and 2 seeds from the
Okay.
individual
Yeah.
groups.
Right.
I see, yeah.
So yeah, Splice going in as the #1 seed means a more fortuitous quarterfinal draw. And for me, I said this on the cast, you can spin this positively for FunPlus Phoenix, because if you are going to have disappointing games and show up flat, it's better to do it now if you're not punished for it at all. They're the #1 seed. They get the same draw as if they were 6-0. So potentially they can learn from this and reach their full potential.
I actually think that makes a lot of sense, especially since just yesterday Spawn was here and was implying, or saying, I mean, at that point, this team was choking a little bit when it mattered most, but you can turn that on its head and say, no, they actually overcame the adversity and are now more primed for that best of 5.
Yeah, in Worlds, historically, I will always remember Samsung, a team that tripped over a few times in groups when they went up against RNG, but that they won the entire tournament. So really, it's about getting to the knockout stage, learning what you can, and taking away from the footage and just becoming a better team at the end.
I agree they showed vulnerabilities, but I'm not willing to yet write them off.
No, I think that would be a bit silly as well. However, who is out is GAM and J-Team. And today on Twitter, I saw a reaction from the LMS casters to, for instance, J-Team being knocked out of Worlds. They got very, very emotional. And I think for us, it is harder to see kind of the side of the teams we don't know as well. But it is, of course, a tragedy for both GAM and J-Team, who, for me, J-Team really surprised me positively. But I'd like to see a bit more out of GAM.
Yeah, I mean, J-Team have a lot of good things to walk away from this tournament with. They went 1-1 against every other team in their group, you know? So this team has shown that they do have upset potential while they don't actually get to move on in the tournament. To be able to walk away with 3 wins is still something.
And I remember coming off of Rift Rivals and really writing off both the VCS and the LMS from their 0-11 performance. That at the end of the day, coming into Worlds, I thought the teams would all bomb out, but then you get to see J-Team showcase their individual strength. Like Fofo can now coming out of the tournament, I mean, in his first major international, and say that he can come back to this stage once again and prove to the world that he's one of the best mid laners.
Good things to take away. Unfortunately for them, it is Splice and FPX moving on. And last night, Law was able to catch up with Visit Chachi, a longtime EU top laner who, after a very emotional day, hit quarters in his very first Worlds.
Now, tell me, you qualified to Worlds when no one believed in you. You made it out of groups and qualified to quarters when we also stopped believing in you. So tell me, Chachi, how do you feel right now?
I feel awesome. But anyways, we always believed in ourselves. And I think that's what matters the most. Because as a team, we knew that we will come in victorious today. We came in with the mindset on stage that we will be victorious. And I think this showed off in our gameplay.
Well, there we go. This is Chachi with the I feel awesome. Of course I do. Yeah, a guy that's been fighting to get to Worlds for so long. Wonderful to see it.
Yeah, I was just so happy to see because for a long time he's been the weak side top laner that doesn't get resources, gets ganked all the time, and is just, you know, sitting there to let his team get through. And we did see some of that. Of course, we saw that through the tournament, but I also liked him experimenting with these other picks, you know, the Cho'Gath in particular, and having really solid performances.
Well, glad you brought it up because in Group B we saw some spicy new picks, not completely new for that Cho'Gath, but definitely opening our eyes into what that Cho'Gath can do, especially in a matchup versus GP.
And I really love this pick. Obviously, Visit Chachi has these pocket picks that he has been willing to pull out time and time again. But on this Cho'Gath, you have early lane priority against the GP. You have gank assist with that Q knockup. Even at level 6, with that mega burst damage, you can look for tower dives and try to shut down and slow down the gangplank.
Yeah, and I think we're going to be seeing the Cho'Gath more in the quarterfinals based off of what Chachi has been able to display on this champion. GP has been a pick that's blinded by a lot of teams in draft phase, and with one early gank, Visit Chachi's Cho'Gath was able to run away with that game. I think specifically having the tankiness and the righteous glory to force mid-game fights after setting a GP behind is one of the things that benefits it more than some of the other picks we've seen into GP.
Even adding to that, we also got to see Ornn do very well in the top lane. So Cho'Gath and Ornn, being able to get yourself into team fights with a reliable front line from your top lane, I think is really undervalued. So when you get into a best of 5 and you can showcase tanks in the top side of the map, that will be the change in the meta.
Absolutely. On top of that, if you can show flexibility in other lanes as well. And with that, I want to talk about mid lane. Kiyaya's Kled in the mid lane was something relatively new. We see actually a good amount of Kled, but in that specific matchup, didn't work out too well.
Yeah, I mean, you picked it to do NB, so that is going to be
Don't do that.
That's a huge risk here, but you can see it's so powerful in these early all-ins, using the remount to get a ton of HP back. Realistically, when we see Kled in the mid lane, I think you need to pair it alongside a strong jungler so that you can take these forward trades. Otherwise, it can be risky to dive in super deep, but once you unlock that, the roam potential and the dive potential is huge.
Yeah, Kled really does only work as a champion who goes in, but I also feel like he's deceptively tanky, and I want to see more of him versus mage bottom lane. So you can see this clip. He was so difficult to kill diving in against that Cinder because he's burst resistant, he can very easily itemize Maw, and he can just vamp up so much health throughout the course of a fight with Conqueror. So Kled in the right situation can be one of the most powerful champions in the game.
And in the right hands of like some of the best teams in the world, you're going to be seeing it be used effectively. I mean, the Marines used it consistently topside, still lost a lot of turret platings because of it, because they can over-index in that. But we're starting to see Kayle in the tournament, and Kayle and Kled is actually just insane to deal with. So I definitely think it's a pick that we should be seeing more often.
Overall, I've just been very happily surprised with everything that we've seen, or a lot of new picks we've seen. Yesterday, we also saw Super Carry Doinby with Malphite. It was rock solid in that mid lane.
Yeah, Super Carry, tank mid lane Malphite.
Yes.
There we go.
And Renekton.
Still carried though.
It was interesting because he was up against the Kled that we just talked about, and at certain points in the game, the Kled was about 4-0, but then later in the game, he could just use his body to disrupt the other team and still find the right initiation. So mid lane Malphite is not something we're going to see that much of, but it is still kind of proven to be a possibly viable pick, which is impressive.
Yeah, and specifically against team compositions that rely heavily on physical damage. I think we saw 4 AD damage dealers on the opposite side in this game, which Malphite, that dude loves just building straight armor.
And the
scary
funniest,
from close.
the funniest thing is that Doomby at times can be too honest, because even in the interview, he was like, I was going to pick Sion, but this is the best situation for a Malphite, so he just picked it anyways. It's fun to see FPX realize that they can build a lot of these teams to be anti-carry, and it really changes how you play against them.
Does that make you hopeful? Because it's cool to see a mid laner that, even if he isn't that practiced on that pick specifically, but knows it'll work in the team comp and for his team, he's still going to pick it and own with it.
That's the beauty of Doomby. If you see him play, he has both styles. You can be a super carry, you can have that 40% damage percentage on either the Vladimir, the Ryze that we saw at the end of the day, or you can just be a sturdy tank that you can't push away.
I don't know what to make of it.
Yeah?
Because there's a chance the Malphite and the Galio and the Sion is going to be the thing that cracks open the world championship for them, and it's the unique thing that takes him all the way. Or he's just going to lose all the games that he plays those things because LWX isn't playing that great and he needs to do damage. So his champion pool is both potentially their greatest strength, but also their greatest weakness because it makes them different than everyone else.
Final note.
That's the biggest risk. At the end of the day is if you are a superstar player and then you're still giving resources or you're playing a supportive position, then it's not in your hands anymore. So that's something we should look towards in FPX.
Yeah,
is
many
if
questions.
other players play well.
Many questions for FPX, but also a high ceiling. And we also have some questions about how this group is going to play out. And today we will say Esports, G2 Esports. Well
That's
done,
the one.
Shocks, your first mention of the team, and you messed it up. G2 Esports take to the stage. So far, this team has been having a lot of fun, but we wanted to determine through our professional panel of analysts and me how much fun they've been having. We dubbed this the Funometer. Basically, we're going to look at some clips and then give a score from 1 to 10, 1 being the least fun and 10 being the most fun.
And this is based on what we think would be fun.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, G2 consider a lot of things very fun.
Yes.
So
And I think every time
inting
you give
fun?
a score, you can
Yes.
explain what you thought.
inting is the most fun.
I feel like, inting is kind of a lot of fun,
we'll
but
see.
not
I don't
necessarily
think
for
it's
the
fun.
fans.
And I don't think
We'll
Dracos
see.
will agree with that when he plays games with you.
I carry Dracos every single
What's
game.
the first clip? What are we judging?
Well, the first clip comes from the G2 Griffin game, so let's take a look at that one and how much fun they were having. All right, here we go.
Okay, I think I remember this. Chovy tries to go for a kill, and then I think G2 just make the good collapse. Yeah.
This seems
Chovy
fun.
cues back in to get hit by the shockwave.
So,
But this actually
isn't
isn't
fun
that
for
fun.
Wonder.
Yeah, Wonder's playing Ornn.
Ornn.
There's an Orianna mid lane. That's not really that flashy. Kai'Sa's boring. This is actually not that fun, in my
They
opinion.
clean up though, right?
This
This is
fun.
not fun. They're winning, but G2 don't think winning is
All right,
fun.
1
G2
for
thinks
10
trolling is
when
fun.
10 is like peak fun,
yeah.
and 1 is just
So, but
it's
it
a
seems-
3 for 2, and then they dive afterwards. The final dive is probably pretty fun. This, I don't know, man.
All right, I've got my rating. I'm ready. How fast? Oh my, they killed that Nautilus so
Okay,
quickly.
okay.
Maybe that's a little bit more fun.
I know what I got here.
Yeah. We also interpret fun as like happy games for G2, so.
I'm just gonna go with my own interpretation of fun. I'm giving that
All
a
right.
6.
A 6.
Shocks
got a
is going
0.
0.
I got myself a 9.
Wait.
Look.
I have a
feel like-
2.
So the
That's a
lower
lot
my
of fun.
score,
No.
the higher like the level of play. So not a lot of fun means they were doing well.
So here's the thing. These
Winning
guys
is fun, Shocks.
These guys are not EU casters. They don't get it. We get it that G2 is not having fun even though they won that game. Like a 6, that's still relatively high for G2.
So what's the 9 for?
yeah, what's going on there?
Oh,
There's
we'll
like a
see.
face too.
Yeah,
Can you
what's-
show
For
that
me,
again?
it's definitely a fun. That's a smiley face.
9.0?
With a little bit of a stubble. 9.0. I got to be exact.
Okay,
here.
I like
you
it.
said out of 10.
We're giving
there are a
halves
lot of
now.
numbers
We're giving
involved.
halves
Okay,
or
what's the
comments. There we
next
go.
one?
Next
Let's
play
go.
going up. Maybe this one will be more fun. G2 versus C9. Now I think that one got a bit more bloody.
All right, what do we got here?
Tower dive.
Okay.
Ooh.
Okay, now you'll all forget that this is the game where Wonder and Yankos are just running it down together. So
Yeah.
you only see Yankos die in this clip. He was like 0 and 5 on
This is kind of a
Kiana.
misrepresentation of what happened in that
6.
game.
Yes, I think
like
we were
the same
supposed
as
to see
last
a
play.
lot of like repeated inting from Yankos
Hey,
in that clip.
they won, and I need that 6 to be thicker. You can like barely even see it.
Yeah. I'll give it a
Lighting.
4.
I'll give
There we
it,
go.
from the Jankos perspective, that's a 3.5. You may not see it.
Wait, no, that's a 7.
3.5.
Jankos is having so much fun.
How?
Okay, if you actually watch the player cams in that game, Jankos is losing his mind, just like cracking up the
adding
entire
outside
time.
circumstances.
That's
I ain't
important.
looking at his
He's
face.
having fun.
All right.
That's really important.
Maybe we can be more unanimous about this last one. Last video is about G2 versus HKA,
Okay.
where I, even as, of course, a bit of a supporter for G2, was definitely very afraid. But we only see the positive.
Oh, it looks like a bait. Immediately, baits are fun because you know the master plan. Oh, I got this.
I mean, they've also got like Yasuo in the bottom lane. This was the closest game out of all 3 that they played against Hong Kong Attitude. So that's generally more fun for G2 because that means they get more kills.
I mean, now I'm just confused
Me
because,
too.
like,
This was all good videos.
the HKA
Yeah.
game was the least fun they had when I
Yeah.
was watching their
Yeah.
player cams.
It's
but
the
then
play.
after you win, it's fun. So a 6 again.
Oh my God, you're not even using the
I
other
got
cards.
2 spare cards because that's all I needed.
All right,
So-
give me your cards.
Give it a middle of the road 5
What
here.
I'm coming
Oh, we
to
got the zoom.
realize, and
11.
also what we'll touch on later, is that it's
And dollar
really
signs.
hard for us to judge what relative level G2 is hitting in these games. Is that fair to say?
That's definitely fair to say because look, you consider this team even throughout the LEC, it was really hard to consider like what level are they actually playing at 100%? Because in a lot of games, it hasn't felt like that. Even here at Worlds, I still don't think this team is playing 100%.
That's a question I have for you. How much leash are you willing to give G2?
Yeah.
Like,
So-
how much are you saying, oh, yeah, they were just messing around against Hong Kong Attitude? Or was it a close game?
So I'm personally willing to give them a lot of leash when I consider like what are the highs that they can reach in this tournament because the question is consistency versus peak. And I think consistency for G2 is a problem, but at their peak, when they are playing very good League of Legends, this team can win Worlds.
And I'm going to be the old man at the table and say, I've seen Invictus Gaming be in that position. You always have like a little bit of faith, but then they come through in the most serious of matches. So I'm going to give them a long leash until the knockout.
That's what I like to hear.
Jack,
we go.
you asked the question. What's your personal opinion?
I'm with Raz here, where I think I agree with their peak. But if I'm judging all the teams equally,
Yeah.
that type of variance is seen as a weakness for other teams, and I think it is a weakness for G2 as well. And on their best day, they can win it, but you don't know if it's always going to be their best day.
I think that's totally fair. And through that light, we'll also look at the games that G2 and the rest of the teams play in Group A. It'll be all locked up. After today, 2 teams are going home and 2 teams move on to the quarterfinals.
Yeah, today we get, we had Group B yesterday, we have Group A today, and coming into the day, it feels like G2 and Griffin are going to be the favorites to make it out, which means the upset potential for me is between who can get second place. Can Cloud9 actually make a run here?
I mean, game 1 is going to tell us what type of day we have.
Yeah.
Either it's going to be a race between Griffin and G2 for first, or it's going to be C9 in there. Because if C9 lose that first game, G2 would actually have to go 0-3 in order for C9 to advance. So
Yikes.
all my eyes are on that first game to start the day.
I would say crazier things have happened, so nothing's out of the window yet. And despite G2 reigning supreme so far 3-0, Caps still feels that G2, or Group A rather, can play out in a multitude of ways.
So right now we are first. We have Griffin coming in behind us, and then there's like Cloud9, and in the bottom HK. And I think it's pretty accurate. At least I would like to think that, considering we are first. But I also think that a lot of the stage games have been really close. No one's really been playing too clean. Even HK has been looking pretty good against us in the game, and as well as Cloud9. And it feels like a lot of the games anyone can take. I feel like HK is maybe a bit too low in just like their win rate right now to actually make a run for it, because they won't get a win against us. But I think either C9 or Griffin can for sure make it out.
So I've seeing the interview from Crash from Hong Kong Attitude, they're looking for an upset, and just seeing their game versus Griffin where they had that level 1, their game versus Cloud9 where they should have won that game. I'm saying right now, it's going to happen. One game.
They look poised.
One game. Well, I don't know who it's going to be. I'm going to pull a Vedius and say, I don't know, like, it's going to happen. I don't know who
You're
it's
just
going
saying
to be.
there's a chance.
Yeah.
There's a chance.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked a fair amount already about G2, but I would like to talk about Cloud9 as well, because the first week was a bit here and there with them, and they started Blabber in the jungle for all of those games. Now, for 2 of those games. Now, Svenskeren is back and is going to play. How does this change the C9 that we're going to see today?
So valuable to have him back in the game. He did win the most valuable player in the LCS.
Yes.
So I can see why they gave Blabber some games, because they do like practicing with both of them, and he must have been very performant in scrims. But you could see the mid game is just not the same when Blabber is in there. And even though C9 could stay in the game early, they would fall apart after the 15-minute mark. And that is very much what happened in the LCS. So with Svenskeren being back in, don't expect the same level of craziness in the early game, but expect C9 to be better after 15 minutes, be more cohesive as a team, and hopefully be able to pick up some wins where they found losses in the first round robin.
I wonder if C9 were maybe a little bit surprised with how close that game against Griffin actually was. You know, they were ahead for a lot of that match because coming into this group, I thought, well, C9 gonna have a rough time. Svenskeren is their biggest asset, but they're against two of the best junglers in the tournament in Jankos and Tarzan. So why not put in the more volatile player? After seeing maybe GT a little bit, the game against Griffin a little bit closer, now they want that shot calling to make sure they can cross the finish line.
Yeah, and just for people that don't remember, last year in the knockout stage when they went up against the Freak of Freaks, it was predominantly Svenskeren and Jensen that was leading them in those games. Svenskeren is a very smart jungler, and one of the stats that popped out to me for Sven as a player is that, you know, jungle proximity, he is definitely going to be impacting mid lane, and I want to see how Niski can perform as a result of that.
Great point. We'll see the turnaround for C9 with Svenskeren in the jungle if it happens. I also want to touch on the bottom lane. It is a contentious point because Sneaky has not played a marksman so far. What do we think of that? What do you think of the champion pools that have been shown?
I think it is quite peculiar what's happened to the bottom lane meta in this group specifically. So you have Sneaky, one of the most experienced AD carry players in the world on the international stage, and he's played Heimer, Sona, Cassio. You then kind of look at the rest of the group, and it's actually Perks who's playing the fewest mages in the bottom lane. So I wonder if they're going to try and put him back on an AD carry. Based on what we've seen, though, probably still mages.
It's a bit strange because a lot of people have been calling for draft changes on Sneaky, and I'm looking at him like, I don't actually think it's a champion pool problem for Sneaky. I see mistakes not in how he's playing around cooldowns, not in how he's, you know, right-clicking with his champions, but actually just lane positioning, which is going to be pretty much unaffected whether or not you're playing a marksman or a mage.
And my take on the whole bottom lane situation throughout Worlds changes fairly frequently, but my ultimate take is that it's really risky to throw in your dual lane, especially if it's a mage, in the first phase. You really want to know what the full composition, especially on the Heimerdinger, because Cloud9, I think, got burnt the most. While they still won the game versus Hong Kong Attitude, the Heimerdinger was completely useless because it was dealing with a Garen Yuumi that it could have penetrated. So I think that definite takeaway, go for a Kai'Sa Zion first phase to be the most safe, and Garen Yuumi, I think, is the safest pick of them all.
Should we look also past lane? Because when you look at how C9 was so successful also in the LCS, it wasn't uncommon that it was the top, the jungle, and the mid lane that had the biggest advantages early, but it's about what do you then do with a completely different type of champion as a team when that laning phase is over?
It's very true, especially because even though the way Cloud9 plays their early games in the LCS is similar to what they've done here at Worlds, not having the sustained damage out of Sneaky is a detriment to them. His laning phases weren't great in the LCS, mainly because Svenskeren didn't spend attention down there, but he has consistently been able to put out damage in teamfights, and it's an adjustment that Cloud9's had to make this World Championship.
Maybe we can find out a bit more when we talk to their coach, because Laura caught up with him just now.
Thanks, guys. Laure here, and joining me right now is Reaper, ahead of Cloud9's big day. Thank you very much for joining me. We know that Cloud9 is one of the Western teams that works the best around substitutes, and you chose to go with Svenskeren instead of Blabber today, even though we saw him for a majority of games. So can you give me the reasoning behind this?
So Blabber was kind of coin flip against G2, which is supposed to be stronger than us, and also the reason behind, one more reason behind was also kind of like scouting, like G2 and Griffin. Pusher, Blabber have ability for the get us the win. And also he's very good at like play aggressive, and he's figured out the in-game stuff. So yeah, we was using him for scouting and coin flip for make the best chance for Svenskeren.
And now it's do or die, so you don't have any choice. Now, you worked with them for a while now. Can you explain what makes them different and which one you need in which situation?
So Blabber is kind of really aggressive, and he's very young. He don't think too much. He just go, and he just looking for kills. So it's a really difference than Svenskeren, which is Svenskeren is also aggressive, but more control the game, and he wanna control his lanes and his own jungling and even enemy jungler. So it's a very different style, but the first of all the matches, Blubber kind of advantage over the Spence Kieran because of his no thinking or aggression.
All right. In terms of communication, is it different too?
Yeah, very different. Blubber usually not communicate too much. He just say, I want to go, I want to kill, bang me up, that kind of stuff only. But Spence Kieran usually like, yeah, we need to do something like that, yeah.
More independent, more of a leader maybe now. Talking about the champions, we mostly saw Sneaky playing mages so far. So why did you think it was the best option for the team?
Sneaky playing mages was giving us lots of like team fight tours and kind of strong laning page stuff, but we failed. anyway, yeah, we are trying to like trying to play aggressive at the early game or mid game, but that was the reason. We'll see if we keep playing those or not.
We'll see how it goes for you today because you're not in the easiest spot right now, being third. I know that Niski is not worried. He said that G2 is playable. You can go 50-50 against Griffin. So tradition states that Cloud9 always makes it out of group. What's your take on that today, based on the results you had?
I mean, it's gonna be big tough for us. It's gonna be easy.
Easy? So you make it out?
Easy to make it out, for sure.
All right. Well, thank you, and glad to see confidence here. Thank you, Ripper. Good luck for today. Back to you guys.
Easy.
I love watching Reaper interviews.
Yeah.
But I also feel like there's some context that needs to be given. Reaper has such an incredibly sterling reputation as a coach in doing very unconventional things that would get other coaches flamed to hell or maybe even fired, like having a roster that works, subbing people out, and losing games. But he has enough of a track record of success that you're willing to trust him on stuff. Because I think, logically, having the MVP of the league and not playing him in 2 of the first games in group stage is something that almost no other coach would do. But for someone like Reaper, I'm willing to give him the trust to try it and see if it works out today.
And I think we also need to give that respect to the organization of Cloud9, who is now at their 7th consecutive World Championship and only failed to make quarterfinals once and always come in clutch. But they're up versus Griffin in this first game, and that's a tough one because they lost it in a dramatic fashion when they played Griffin and Jad. In this particular game, there is so much on the line for the standings.
Yeah, if C9 lose this game, then G2 would have to go winless through the rest of the day for C9 to make it out. So they have to be completely focused on Griffin right now.
Let's remember though, C9 was in a beautiful position to close out this game. Licorice was super fed on the split pushing Fiora. He took down the bot lane inhibitor tower at 24 minutes, and then C9 snuck the Baron at 25. So the fact that they were then able to lose after over pushing in mid lane without their top laner being able to pressure on other sides of the map showed a big hole in C9's game plan and is what opened the door to let Griffin back in.
And Griffin, we know, have a lot going on behind the scenes, and it's very hard for us to say what kind of an influence that in the end has on the players we see on the Rift. And I think when you take it all together, they still went 2-1. So they are in a positive position coming into this second half of the group stage.
And the facts are pretty plain. They're strong individual players. Chovy's been having a lot of solo kills. Post 20 minutes, they've been really successful at setting up for objectives, getting team fights. So this is what we're seeing from Griffin, and I expect it to only get better.
Yeah, finally, the predictions for this one. We already talked about the importance of the game for both teams, but namely for Cloud9. Ender, who and why?
All right, I've got my money on Griffin in this game. I'm specifically looking at the bottom lane. Last time, it was Sona Tomkench, which I hate, versus Garen Yumi, which I also hate. Now, I think that specific 2v2 masked a lot of weaknesses from the C9 bot lane, and on more standard picks, that's where Griffin's bot lane is going to come up huge.
I'll echo the sentiment. I also have Griffin. I think Griffin will only get better and the drafts will only follow. There we go. I got you.
Let me say one thing. My analytical opinions on NA teams rarely influence the results. In this case, I feel like last week Griffin had 3 bad early games. I think their early game will improve, and they still won 2 out of 3 games because their fundamentals are so strong.
Clean sweep.
I'm predicting Griffin. I think Cloud9. Hey,
what?
This is where Cloud9 is in their comfort zone when they're the underdog.
I think they agree with the fans.
Are they the ones tweeting?
Yes, of course they are.
Put your phones down.
Jad, what you just said is going to be instrumental today. Cloud9 have a record for coming in clutch on the days when it matters most. And even though they have a tough road ahead of them, the last 3 worlds, they have made it out of groups. Let's see if it is their day once again.